Jaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtapraheshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28, Puranjan becomes a woman in the next life. Text number 6 onwards. Kanyopaguro nashta shri kripano vishyatmakaha nashta pragyo hritashvaryo gandhar vayavanar balat. So Narad Muni is further speaking to King Prachin Bharishat. When King Puranjan was embraced by Kalkanya, he gradually lost all his beauty. Having been too much addicted to sex, he became very poor in intelligence and lost all his opulence. Being bereft of all possessions, he was conquered forcibly by the Gandharvas and the Yavans. When a person is attacked by the invalidity of old age and is still addicted to sense gratification, he gradually loses all his personal beauty, intelligence, and good possessions. He thus cannot resist the forceful attack of the daughter of time. So this is what happens when you're too much attached to sense gratification. So slowly, first of all, old age will take away all the possessions, all the power to enjoy, and then the frustration will add in because there is no spiritual guidance. Vishiranam swapurim viksha pratikulan nanadritam putran potran ugamatyan jayam chagatso hridam. King Puranjan then saw that everything in his town was scattered and that his sons, grandsons, servants, and ministers were all gradually opposing him. He also noted that his wife was becoming cold and indifferent. When one becomes an invalid, his senses and organs are weakened. So these are called sons, grandsons, servants, ministers. And the wife was the intelligence. In other words, they are no longer under one's control. The senses and sense objects then begin to oppose him. When a person is in a distressed condition, even his family members, his sons, grandsons, and wife become disrespectful. They no longer are under the command of the master of the house. Just as we wish to use our senses for sense gratification, the senses also require strength from the body in reciprocation. A man keeps a family for enjoyment, and similarly, family members demand enjoyment from the head of the family. Or enjoyment means their main enjoyment is give us money. When they do not receive sufficient money from him, they grow disinterested and ignore his commands or desires. This is all due to one's being a kripan, miser. This word kripan, used in the 6th verse, is in opposition to the word Brahman. In the human form of life, one should become a Brahman, which means that one should understand the constitutional position of the absolute truth. But then why Kripan and Brahman? Kripan means miser. Miser means one who does not utilizes the assets he has properly. He just wants to save, but in the end, somebody will steal it or something will happen. So that is a Kripan. And a Brahman means one who utilizes his assets of the body, assets of the intelligence, higher consciousness, utilizes it properly. And a Vaishnava is even further. He utilizes everything in the service of the Lord. A Brahman might utilize it just to know the absolute truth for self-realization and other purposes. But a Vaishnava uses everything in the service of the Lord. So better to become a Vaishnava. In the human form of life, one should become a Brahman, which means that one should understand the constitutional position of the absolute truth. Brahman, and then engage in his service as a Vaishnav. We get this facility in the human form of life, but if we do not properly utilize this opportunity, we become a kripan, miser. A miser is one who gets money but does not spend it properly. This human form of life is especially meant for understanding Brahman, for becoming a Brahman. And if we do not utilize it properly, we remain a kripan. We can actually see that when one has money but does not spend it, he remains a miser and is never happy. Similarly, when one's intelligence is spoiled due to sense gratification, he remains a miser throughout his life. And we think we are utilizing the intelligence properly if we are going after sense gratification, crazily after it. I want to eat something nice all the time, or I want to watch some movies all the time because I'm not happy with watching just one movie and this. I want opposite sex and the association of opposite sex. So I want to drink and I want to gamble. I want to eat meat. It's in the end, it does bring nothing except misery. That's why miser and misery they go together. The words, even in English, I don't think they knew the connection, but they go together. Atmanam kanyaya grastam panchalana dushita duranta chintam apanno na lebhe tat pratikriyam. When King Puranjan saw that all his family members, relatives, followers, servants, secretaries, and everyone else had turned against him, he certainly became very anxious. But he could not counteract the situation because he was thoroughly overwhelmed by Kalkanya. When a person becomes weak from the attack of old age, the family members, servants, and secretaries do not care for him. He is unable to counteract this. Thus, he becomes more and more anxious and laments his frightful condition. And it happens in the old age. He definitely loses the intelligence, cannot think properly, cannot speak properly. And at that time, by the old age, the person he becomes too conditioned in his thought processes, in his speaking, the way he speaks, the way he thinks, the way he acts, the way he deals with others. There's no way one can change it. There's no way. Kamanabhilashandino yatya manshcha kanyaya vigatatman gati sneha putra dharanshcha lalayan. The objects of enjoyment became stale by the influence of Kalkanya. Due to the continuance of his lusty desires, King Puranjan became poor in everything. He did not understand the aim of life. He was still very affectionate towards his wife and children, and he worried about maintaining them. So this is happening on both ends, in the general sense and in the allegory also. Means he could not. The soul is very affectionate towards the body and the sense organs, and worry about maintaining them, but nothing he could do. And the objects of enjoyment became stale by the influence of Kalkanya. When the eyes are not functioning properly, how much things that will give pleasure to our eyes can we look at? And similarly about nose and the tongue, especially the tongue part. The organs stop working properly. Either somebody gets maybe diabetes or some other problems in the stomach, or the teeth are not working. So the same food that he must have enjoyed, relished it earlier, now he cannot taste it even properly. This is exactly the position of present civilization. Everyone is engaged in maintaining the body, home, and family. Consequently, everyone becomes confused at the end of life, not knowing what spiritual life and the goal of human life are. In a civilization of sense gratification, there cannot be spiritual life because a person thinks only of this life. Although the next life is a fact, no information is given about it. And the Prabhupada is saying, so if we don't know about the next life, that is, even if somebody knows, like in India, people know, but they don't believe in it actually. They have heard about it, they don't believe it. And outside India, it hardly matters. They don't know anything about it. So for them, this life is all in all. And especially when one becomes old, then he starts lamenting, oh, I did not enjoy properly. Whole life I was working so hard to make money, to maintain my family. Oh, I did not enjoy it. And then he tries to enjoy with that old body, uh, with all the diseases. It just creates more misery actually. गंधर्व यवनाक्रांतं कालकन्योपमर्दितां हातुं प्रचक्रमे राजा तां पुरीम् अनिकामतः. The city of King Puranjan was overwhelmed by the Gandharva and the Yavan soldiers, and although the king had no desire to leave the city, he was circumstantially forced to do so, for it was smashed by Kalkanya. The living entity, separated from the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, tries to enjoy this material world. He is given a chance to enjoy it in a particular type of body, beginning with the body of Brahma down to the microbe. From the Vedic history of creation, we can understand that the first living creature was Lord Brahma, who created the 7 great sages and the Prajapatis to increase the universal population. Thus, every living entity, according to karma, his past desires and activities, gets a particular type of body, from that of Brahma to that of a microbe or germ in the stool. Due to long association with a particular type of material body, and also due to the grace of Kalkanya and her Maya, one becomes overly attached to a material body, although it is the abode of pain. Even if one tries to separate a worm from the stool, the worm will be unwilling to leave it. It will return to the stool. Similarly, a hog generally lives in a very filthy state, eating stool, but if one tries to separate it from its condition and give it a nice place, the hog will be unwilling. In this way, if we study each and every living entity, we will find that he will defy offers of a more comfortable position. Although King Puranjan was attacked from all sides, he was unwilling to leave the city. In other words, the living entity, whatever his condition, does not want to give up the body. But he will be forced to give it up because, after all, material body cannot exist forever. So this is the situation of everybody, every living entity in the material world. Worm in the stool, hog, dogs, human beings, people of heavenly planets, they don't want to leave their body because this is the body I identify and this is the body I think I can enjoy with. And even when one becomes old, he does not want to leave the body. Because unless until somebody has spiritual knowledge, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kumaram yonam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. So one who is dhira, sober, sober means complete control of body, mind, and words, senses. He only does not get muyati, does not get bewildered by the change of the body. Rest, everybody gets bewildered. But he will be forced to give it up. The living entity wishes to enjoy the material world in different ways, and therefore, by nature's law, he is allowed to transmigrate from one body to another, exactly as a person transmigrates from the body of an infant to a child, to a boy, to a youth, to a man. This process is constantly going on. At the last stage, when the gross body becomes old and invalid, the living entity is reluctant to give it up, despite the fact that it is no longer usable. Although material existence and the material body are not comfortable, why does the living entity not want to leave? As soon as one gets a material body, he has to work very hard to maintain it. He may engage in different fields of activity, but whatever the case, everyone has to work very hard to maintain the material body. Unfortunately, society has no information of the soul's transmigration because a living entity does not hope to enter the spiritual kingdom of eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. He wants to stick to his present body, even though it may be useless. Consequently, the greatest welfare activity in this material world is the furthering of the Krishna consciousness movement. Means by giving the knowledge to others. First of all, this body is not all in all. This is not the first body we have had, and if we don't become devotees, this is not going to be the last body. So the point is to become devotees. Leave this terrible body full of pain and miseries and all kinds of troubles. Go to the spiritual world, get a spiritual body, and live happily ever after. That is the real living happily ever after. This movement is given human society information about the kingdom of God. There is God, there is Krishna, and everyone can return to God and live eternally in bliss and knowledge. A Krishna conscious person is not afraid of giving up the body because his position is always eternal. A Krishna conscious person engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord eternally. Therefore, as long as he lives within the body, he is happy to engage in the loving service of the Lord. And when he gives up this body, he is also permanently situated in the service of the Lord. The saintly devotees are always free and liberated, whereas the karmis who have no knowledge of spiritual life or the transcendental loving service of the Lord are very much afraid of giving up the rotten material body. They're very much afraid. So afraid everybody, or those who are not spiritually advanced, they just somehow or other want to increase the duration of their stay in this body. They'll try to do everything, give money to the physicians, to the doctors, to the health people, to do all kinds of activities or exercises to prolong the duration of life in this body. But he can't. Just can't. If that was the case, no wealthy person would die young. But they do die. Whether it is industrialists, religious leaders, political leaders, anybody. People do die young. Of course, scientists say we're gonna, in the future, we'll make you all deathless. Right now you die, but in the future we'll do this or do that. Not gonna happen. So these chapters of King Puranjan and his wife, very, very important to develop the detachment. Bhay namno agrajo bhrata prajvara pratyupastita dadahatam purim krichnam bhratu priya chikirshaya. Under the circumstances, the elder brother of Yavanraj, known as Prajavar, set fire to the city to please his younger brother, whose other name is fear itself. So set fire to the city means it became sick or fever, increase the fever. According to Vedic system, a dead body is set on fire, but before death, there is another fire of fever, which is called Prajvar or Vishnu Jvar. Medical science verifies that when one's temperature is raised to 107 degrees, a man immediately dies. This Prajvar or higher fever at the last stage of life places the living entity in the midst of a blazing fire. So the body temperature raises to 107 degree and the man dies. Tasyam sandaya manayam sapora saparichadaha kautumbika kutumbinya upatapyat sanvyaha. When the city was set ablaze, all the citizens and servants of the king, as well as family members, sons, grandsons, wives, and other relatives were within the fire. King Puranjan thus became very unhappy. And of course, who can be happy when the fever is so high? There are many parts of the body, the senses, the limbs, the skin, the muscles, the blood, marrow, etc. And all these are considered here figuratively as sons, grandsons, citizens, and dependents. When the body is attacked by the Vishnu Jwar, the fiery condition becomes so acute that sometimes one remains in a coma. This means that the body is in such severe pain that one becomes unconscious and cannot feel the miseries taking place within the body. Indeed, the living entity becomes so helpless at the time of death that although unwilling, he is forced to give up the body and enter another. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that man may, by scientific advancement, improve the temporary living conditions, but that he cannot avoid the pangs of birth, old age, disease, and death. These are under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of material nature. A foolish person cannot understand this simple act. Now, people are very busy trying to find petroleum in the midst of the ocean. They are very anxious to make provisions for the future petroleum supply, but they do not make any attempts to ameliorate the conditions of birth, old age, disease, and death. So ameliorate means to make them better. Thus, a person in ignorance, not knowing anything about his own future life, is certainly defeated in all his activities. And see how Prabhupada explains the meaning of coma. So many people that go into coma, and it means the body is in such severe pain that one becomes unconscious and cannot feel the miseries because he cannot take the pain anymore. So that is coma. Coma is literally, it's not a full stop, but it's not the continuation either. So it's between life and death situation. Of course, the mind is still active, the person can still hear, but he cannot respond. Sometimes he comes out of the coma and then he looks around, and the doctors are there, nurses are there watching everything, and then all it does is hospital bill keeps on raising, that's all. But this is such a helpless condition, being in coma. But so many people go into coma and after a while they leave the body. So many people come back also. I'm not saying everybody dies. It's a very terrible situation. Terrible, terrible situation. So all we have to do is pray to Krishna, become spiritually advanced, pray, pray, pray. In this life, Krishna, whatever karmas I've done, I have to suffer for them. The only thing is, please don't let me forget you. That's all. Don't let me forget your lotus feet, your holy name, your pastimes, your beautiful form. Don't let me forget that. And there have been instances where devotees, when they were leaving the body, although body was completely diseased and completely invalid, but the devotees, when they were about to leave the body, Prabhupada disciples, so one of the devotees said, "Oh, Prabhupada, you have come." Means he was looking up in the air, and Prabhupada had come to take him back. So this is a special benefit of serving such a pure devotee, Prabhupada, that sometimes it is said, even though maybe Krishna will forget, although he doesn't forget the services we render to him, but maybe there's a chance. But Prabhupada will never forget. A pure devotee never forgets. So he'll come or he'll make arrangements for proper departure. So with that faith, we have to keep going strongly. In fact, more strong, more and more strong, more dedication, more determination. So we'll stop here, and I also want to wish